Did violent video games lead the shooters in the Columbine High School to commit such a terrible atrocity? There have been studies done to evaluate a link between violent video games and aggressive behavior in adolescents. I've done some internet research on the topics of video games being linked to aggressive behavior and have witnessed the behaviors of teenagers after playing video games such as Halo and the Left 4 Dead video game. Studies over the years have determined that violent video games lead to an increase in aggressive behavior and a decrease in helping others. This view has been under controversy for the past few years. Some people believe that it leads to a lot more aggression and it leads to a decrease in you wanting to be willing to help others. Tonight I'd like to talk to you about violent video games and aggressive behavior in adolescence, myths and facts about this controversial topic, and tips for parents on regulating game playing. Aggressive behavior in adolescence. Playing violent video games increases aggressive behavior in the short run. Just like when you go, especially guys, when you go and watch an action-packed movie and there's lots of butt kicking, man, it gets you fired up and you just want to go out and whoop somebody after you watch them, and you're like, man, that's short-term aggression. And that's what these controversies are saying, that these video games are causing short-term aggression, not long-term. Debates over whether the Columbine shooters were more violent due to playing violent video games regularly. Studies done observing college-age students. Women tend to be more aggressive than the men, and it causes the adolescents to view the world more violently for some time. Video games, they also reward violence. Man, the more people you kill, the more rewards you get, the higher ranks you get. And this study was done by a fellow named Sean Swint at WebMD Health News at webmd.com. The first myth on violent video games. The research has yielded very mixed results. Here are some quotes of these myths, and they come from Dr. Craig A. Anderson from www.apa.org. And the first myth is this: violent video game research has yielded very mixed results. The facts. Some studies have yielded non-significant video game effects, just as some smoking studies failed to find a significant link to lung cancer. But when one combines all relevant empirical studies using meta-analytical techniques, 5 separate effects emerge with considerable consistency. Violent video games are significantly associated with increased aggressive behavior, thoughts, and affect, increased psychological arousal, and decreased prosocial helping behavior. Average effect sizes for experimental studies and correctional or correlational studies. But man, it increases aggressive behavior, the thoughts and effect. It decreases your social activity. A lot of teenagers who play a lot of video games, they say aren't very socially active. They can't interact with the world very well. Myth 3. Laboratory experiments are irrelevant. Trivial measures demand characteristics and lack external validity. The facts is this: arguments against laboratory experiments in behavioral sciences have been successfully debunked many times by numerous researchers over the years. Specific examinations of such issues in the aggression domain have consistently found evidence of high external validity. For example, variables known to influence real-world aggression and violence have the same effects on laboratory measures of aggression. So it's saying that what they've tested in the laboratory has been known to have the same influence in real-world aggression from the violent video games. The next myth is field experiments are irrelevant. Aggression measures based either on direct imitation of video game behaviors, karate kicks, or our normal play behaviors The facts. Some field experiments have used behaviors such as biting, pinching, hitting, pushing, and pulling hair. Behaviors that were not modeled in the game. The fact that these aggressive behaviors occur in natural environments does not make them normal play behavior. But it does increase the face validity, and some would argue the external validity of measures. So they're saying that just because they've done these field experiments, they're using things that aren't normal in gameplay, like pulling hair, biting, pushing, hitting, pinching. And people are saying that it don't really match up in real life with the video games because they're using stuff that's totally irrelevant to the experiments they're trying to do. The next myth is this: there are no studies linking between violent video game play to serious aggression, to long-term aggression. Facts: high levels of violent video game exposure have been linked to delinquency, fighting at school, and during free play periods and violent criminal behavior, such as assault and robberies. They're saying that these things have been linked to violent video game play, that they're more apt to become delinquents and get into trouble. Here are some tips for parents. Limit game playing time. Considering that 83% of 8 to 18-year-olds play video games, and 11.9% of video game players fulfill diagnostic criteria of addiction concerning their gaming behavior. They're saying that 11.9 of these 83% of kids, they're addicted to this violent video game behavior and playing, that they're the criteria of these experiments. Another thing that parents should do is check out game ratings and avoid violent games. Some games are rated very bad and very strongly. Some have sexual content in them. Some have very violent scenes, blood, gore. It's not very appropriate for a 4-year-old or for young kids or even for guys your age. Another thing that parents should do, they should encourage their children to play away from the game console and play with other kids. Go outside and play sometimes. Don't spend all your time in front of a video game. Man, interact with other people. Parents should encourage their children to do these things. And the next thing is they should play a game with their child and talk to their child about what is going on in the game. Man, you should play one of the games with your kids. Talk to them about what's going on in the game. The conclusion is this: the action that you're going to take. Avoid overexposure to violent video games. Parents, man, they should play an active role in monitoring their children's gaming habits. Today, we have covered how aggressive behaviors may be linked to violent video games. There are myths and facts surrounding this controversy, and there are tips for parents, and they should follow these tips. Parents should play an active role in their children's gaming habits and should avoid violent video game exposure.